everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Motivate with Coach Camp. I, of course, am your host, Coach Camp. We are down here in these incredibly awesome studios of SRP with Mr. Derek Me Show. So this week I have brought in somebody that's somewhat local, Senatobia, Mississippi, just down the road here from Hernando, Mississippi. And this individual, what I found out about what he had done in the past as far as like his professional career, it's funny because sometimes I don't really line things up. It just kind of happens this way. If you guys have been following along, like I know so many of you have, we had Casey Johns on just last week. She's a country superstar singer, and she used to ride in barrel racing and that. And so I didn't set out to do a rodeo theme, but it turns out that that's the direction we suddenly headed. And it's kind of cool because I feel like things happen for a reason, obviously. So this week's guest is somebody that I can tell you right now, this individual story is going to hit home for a lot of folks. Maybe not the rodeo part. It'll still hit home for a lot of folks there too, but the rest of the story that he's going to share with us is going to be so impactful. It's going to be something that I know you're going to want to share with your family, your friends, because somebody somewhere this is going to resonate with. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce ex-pro bull rider, bareback rider,
yes, sir.
Mr. Davy Ross. How are you doing, sir?
Doing better than I deserve, brother.
Yeah,
Glad
man.
to be here.
Well, I appreciate it because I know that you've been working today.
Shoot, yeah. I hopped straight out of the machine and come straight here.
Last time I checked, outside right now was roughly 195 degrees Fahrenheit.
It is
blazing.
It's blazing out there. Luckily, I've got air in that machine, but if you crawl out of it just for a second, you'll know it.
Yeah, well, that was my next question, if you had air conditioning, because
luckily I do.
Man, being out in the field, there's not a lot of shade if you're in a field working.
That's right.
So you grew up, where'd you grow up from?
I grew up in Senatobia, Mississippi. Okay. I did. I've been there 41 years.
Oh, wow.
Just had my 41st birthday on the 1st of this month.
Nice. So you grew up in Senatobia, and family life. Tell me a little bit about the background there. Family, mom, dad, brother, sister.
Yeah, I got my parents, my mom and dad. They're both still living and in good health. I've got a brother, Don, and a sister, Kim, and a sister, April.
Okay. Well, I do know some of your family members. Turns out, so I thought I recognized the name whenever I was connected with you, and then I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, this has got to be in the same Ross family, Senatobia. So it was your brother.
That's right.
That I used to coach against, more or less. His son played against my teams all the time, and
That's
big
right.
baseball family, obviously.
Yes, sir.
And
big baseball family.
You guys down there, y'all, what do y'all do down in Senatobia? Explain that to my viewers.
Well, I like to hunt and fish a lot, and since I've retired from professional rodeo, I retired at 36, and I've got into fishing, tournament fishing now, and I love it. I've just traded one love for the other, and man, it's a great group of guys that I'm around all the time in that world, so I'm blessed to be able to, lay one career down and still be able to old man and pick up another one.
I'm just guessing now. I would think fishing is probably a little less physically strenuous.
A little less dangerous, too.
A little less dangerous, too, I would imagine.
Right.
Sometimes that could depend on who you're fishing with.
That's right.
Because I have been with some folks. I'm just saying.
I've scared a few in my boat.
Oh, have you really? Okay,
yeah.
All right, yeah. And so you guys y'all have a sod farm?
We do. We raise sod. We've been doing it, I guess, about 20 years now. And
wow.
I do sod installs and stuff. We got a landscaping company, so every day we're putting down grass somewhere.
Yeah, you guys are very busy folks.
We are. We've been
hard working, and I'm always impressed by the fact that y'all can grow an entire massive acreage of sod, and I struggle with the 10-foot by 10-foot section in my front yard. I'm just like, what is going on, man?
Lots of practice, I tell you.
Yeah, you guys have a gift for sure, because I've bought a bunch of it from your family actually over the years. So.
Yes, sir. We've been blessed.
So growing up, whenever you're down in Senatobia, you talk about the rodeo. Was there family members that were involved in the rodeo as well?
Actually, I was the first one in the whole family. My dad had horses, cattle, growing up as a kid, but I was the first one to ever jump out in the rodeo world.
What did they think?
Well, it just kind of happened all of a sudden. We went up there one day to a good friend of my dad's. He's been like a father to me all my life. My dad's best friend, Mr. Mike Crockett. He used to team rope, and we had to meet him one day for something. We went up to Northwest Arena. I guess I was about 8 or 9 years old, and they were roping steers. And just for laughs and giggles, he asked me, you want to get on one of them steers? And I thought he was kidding. I was like,
At 9 years old?
Yeah. I said, shoot, I'll get on one.
So what'd your dad say?
He was all for it.
He's like, go for it, man.
All for it.
Yeah, were you always kind of a little bit on the edgy side even before then?
I was.
Taking risk?
I was. I've always been a kid that stayed in the hospital, breaking something, stitches or something. Always stayed hurt.
So not even blinking the eye. Did your brother Donnie ever entertain the idea?
In my professional career, he went with me up and down the road a couple of weeks. Matter of fact, we went up into St. Tite, Quebec, and once you cross the Detroit borders where we crossed at, it's a pretty good little haul from here to Detroit. Mm-hmm. Once we got in Canada, he was like, all right, we're here. And I was like, no, we got about another 12 hours. But anyways.
Canada's big.
He went on the road with me, and, he kind of liked it and stuff. It was just a little late in age for him to be able, because there's we're 13 years apart between us.
Oh, wow.
And, rodeo's kind of a young man game. That's kind of tough sport to get in later in age,
Yeah, there's any kind of physical athletics, I think it's fair to say, is mostly a young man's game, right?
That's
Even
right.
in baseball, which is not anywhere near as vigorous as bull riding or such, I mean, you only got so many years in the tank.
That's right.
And then they're behind you quick. So at the age of 8, 9, what were you thinking about once you get on that first steer? Were you addicted to it? It's like, this is my thing?
I knew, before this ever happened, I remember riding down the road with my mom and dad coming around San Antonio bypass. And when you get by the interstate, it used to be a truck stop, had a big orange 76 sign.
I remember that sign.
Remember
yes,
that sign?
Absolutely, yeah.
I used to always love to look at that sign when we passed by it. But I remember looking at that sign. I was probably 5 years old, maybe even younger than that. I don't even know how I remember this. But they were talking about a rodeo on the radio. And I remember asking my parents, what is that? Because when they got to talking about it, it just rung something inside me.
Huh.
I just think it was God working in my heart, in my life at a very young age. I just didn't know it yet. He just hadn't put the pieces in the puzzle together yet.
That is amazing, really. But I can kind of relate in the fact that the very first time that I remembered seeing anything about Major League Baseball was the New York Yankees, and just seeing Reggie Jackson in the 77 World Series hit jack after jack, and I'm like, I love baseball. And I had never played baseball, really.
Amen.
So it was like that was the thing, and then, of course, it took off from there. So I get that part of it. It's just amazing you have such a vivid memory at such an early age.
That's right.
And so whenever you get your first taste of doing this thing, what's the next steps for you at 8, 9? What kind of rodeoing are you doing exactly at that time?
Well, that's the thing. When we first got started, we didn't know anybody. Mr. Bud Young, which is he just retired from the Northwest Rangers rodeo coach. Yeah. But he took me under his wing at a young age, and he would work with me and the college kids, and I took in everything that I could learn. But, I knew when I left there I wanted to ride. I just didn't know where to go. So we started investigating. We found out that Little Britches Rodeo, it just wasn't hardly many of them here. So we had like 2 a year that were here kind of in this area, and then that was it. So we had to travel to Louisiana when we went to rodeo.
I was about to ask you where y'all had to go to then.
Louisiana was a big play in my rodeoing career because they had a lot of Little Britches rodeos. But I started doing that, and matter of fact, the very first rodeo I entered, I won, and I was hooked.
What were you riding?
I was riding just junior bulls, little small junior bulls.
Yeah.
And then when I got about 13 years old, I got on my first bareback horse. I wanted to try to win an all-around title, so you got to do at least more than one event. You have to do 2 or more events to have a chance. So I already rode bulls and bareback horses. I wasn't sure about it. It's a little bit scary kind of watching guys do it,
Riding a bareback horse is scarier than 1,000-something, 2,000-pound bull.
Well, when you
that's fascinating.
When you hang to a horse, you're hung. You're there because you wedge that hand in there. I mean, it's there. When you go off the wrong side of a horse, it can get really bad. I've seen those wrecks as a kid, and I just remember thinking, boy, if you hang in one of them, you're there. But anyways, I put all that out of the side, and the first bareback horse I ever got on, I didn't know anything. I had to pick up all these things to learn about it on my own, little as I go.
Y'all didn't have YouTube back then, probably. Man, it wasn't so easy just to look up some videos.
No
or something.
Cell phones back in the
right.
days.
right.
But I would pick up from the guys that were, world champions in pro rodeo, and I'd watch the things they did. And then at the Little Britches finals, there'd be a couple of guys that were professional cowboys that had won the world. They would invite out there, and they'd work with us. And I'd get about an hour of that, and I just took it all in, man, anything I could get. And I learned basically everything about riding bareback horses the hard way. But it turned out to be my natural nick, my natural ability, because the very first year I rode bareback horses, I won a world title in the little britches.
Wow.
I broke the...
How old were you at that time?
I was 13.
Wow.
And I broke the highest mark ride in history ever in the bareback riding out there. And
explain a little bit how that sounds or what that looks like, because not everybody knows about the rodeo stuff. So, what is the idea? What's the goal on a bareback? Obviously, hold on as long as you can.
That's right.
But what's the full stretch on that?
It's kind of like the bull riding. It's an 8-second event.
Okay.
You got 2 judges, one on each side. Both the judges judge you 1 to 25. One judge one on the rider, one on the stock, and possible score of 100, which there's only been one 100-point ride in history. But anyways, anytime you get up in the high 80s, low 90s, that's really phenomenal good. But you just want to sit square, have body control, fast feet, and just have total control, and just, man, look like you know what you're doing.
Yeah, so I'm assuming now, because I've been to a few rodeos, and I'm telling you, like the bareback thing, they have like the neck brace thing on, and they're leaning way back on the horse.
That's right.
And they're like, they have their feet up here near the neck, it seems like, and it's just back and forth. How can you anticipate anything? Like almost on a bull, look, full disclosure, I've only ridden extremely tame horses, very tame horses to the point you almost couldn't spook the horses. So I have no concept as to what I would be saying here, but what I'm envisioning is, you see a bull, and they are almost a little bit more predictable about how they'll kick left and they kick right, and they'll say some bulls are a little less predictable, and that's why they're so successful at throwing riders off, because they can shift their body.
That's right.
And then they kick back the other way and it throws them. I cannot see in any form or fashion how a horse can be predictable. So is that where the harder part of it comes from?
The thing about a bareback riding is it's the most physical event in rodeo on your body.
Wow.
Like you see those neck rolls, that's because that head pops so bad.
Yeah,
I've seen guys get knocked out from that head just popping so hard, But that's why we wear that neck roll, because we get sore on that neck a lot, But the thing about a horse is a horse will hurt itself. A bull will want to hurt you, but a horse, they get so riled up sometimes.
I've seen them land on their back.
That's right. They'll absolutely hurt themselves. That's what I say when I say that. I've seen them jump up and run through fences and stuff, but a horse can really hurt you.
So I know that there's a story here, and we have not had this discussion. I know there's a story here. When's the first time you saw somebody get hurt on a horse, or were you the first person that you ever saw get hurt? Because there's no way that you go to enough rodeos and you don't see somebody get hurt.
Well, I've seen so many wrecks through the years. I try to think back. Early in my career, it wasn't on a horse, but it was at a rodeo. I was in 2 events that night in the bull riding, but I did see a kid get killed one night.
Oh, wow.
Right in front of me.
Oh, geez.
And, we didn't know right then he was dead, but we kind of figured it was not going to be good. But, when you have to crawl in right behind something like that and have your mind on the game, it's not always easy to do.
I wouldn't think so.
That's one of them deals where at the prime of my career, when I was at the peak of my game, when I crawled in there, I was fully ready to die at any moment.
Yeah.
I've only been at that level once or twice in my career. I didn't want to die, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I had it all on the line. I didn't hold nothing back. I was fully prepared to leave this world every time I crawled in
I could see where the trepidation would prevent you from being successful at something like that.
That's
it's probably like I'm equating this not as physical, but the mentality like a race car driver. When you get out there, if you're going to go for the front line, you're in and out of the traffic. You cannot be thinking about if I tip one of these guys, it could be over with.
That's right.
So, you've got to mentally check into, this is my focus, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm not going to have any kind of, trepidation or hold back on that.
That's right.
And so what was the first injury you sustained? Because there's no way you bull ride or you horse ride for any length of time and you don't start having injuries. So what was the first one?
At Bull Mania in Memphis one year, I got bucked off a bull, and I come down. You can see it on TV, my arm, when it snaps and breaks. And before I can get up, the bull spins around his back feet, step on the same broke arm.
Oh, my.
And then he's chasing me, so I'm running. My arm's flopping all around, so I got to flop my arm back over and try to hold it somewhat, because it was just.
How old were you?
I was 11 years old in the junior bull riding at Memphis, Tennessee. Yeah. That was the first injury.
No, I think that qualifies.
2 weeks later, I was riding with a cast on in the practice pen, so it wasn't my riding arm anyway, it was my free hand.
So did you play any other sports?
I tried to play baseball. You just interfered. in my rodeo. I played football through high school. I did it till about my 11th grade year, and I couldn't do it anymore because I was leaving every Friday and Saturday going to rodeo somewhere. And it worked out good because I got to work out with the football team. I stayed in great shape.
Yeah.
And, I was a good athlete, too.
What position did you play in football?
I played tailback.
Okay.
I played tailback.
So you're, growing up very athletic, you think about the sports like rugby or hockey or, football, even things that are very physical. I don't think you get much more physical than a bull.
That's right.
I'm clearly a horse as well, but I'm just saying, like, the strength of a bull is impeccable. And so you have your first major injury, broken arm. Doesn't set you back at all. Put it in a cast, get back out there again. I have to say this part too. So at the age of 11, 12, 13, 14, those ages for most people are pretty impressionable when it comes to life events. I'll give an example. I have a nephew. He was about 10 or 11. Got popped in the mouth real good with a line drive one time. That's all it took. Done with baseball. No more. How is an 11-year-old with an arm flopping back and forth say to themselves, you know what, next week, boys, I'm going back out there. I get it at like 25. You're determined that's your path. It's either do or don't. But at 11, where does that kind of just mental toughness come from?
Well, I was raised up kind of tough.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. It had to be something.
All of us, we did. We just were tough kids. Had tough cousins. We had to be tough. I was the youngest one out of all of us. And but, I think a lot of it just had to do, I always say back, I believe God was working in my heart at a young age. And, he was putting those things inside of me when I needed them. But I had so much dedication. I knew what it took, because I watched the winners, the guys that were at the very top, what it took with the things they went through, trials, tribulations, injuries. And I knew to be great, I had to overcome every obstacle as far as injuries, mental game, fear is something that when you ride bulls, bareback horses, you're going to, some point in time, you're going to draw those, what we call really ranked ones that are really dangerous that you can win the whole deal or it could go really bad. So you got to get on those kind, but
sure, and
push all that aside and get out there and take that adrenaline and use it. Because if you don't use it, it becomes fear.
So there's a few things here that I'm connecting right now because we're going to start moving past the adolescence in a moment here. But right now, what I wanted my audience to kind of capture was how does a person get involved with something like that, first of all, which we've kind of built that now. The second part of it is, depending on what that path is that you're going down, some things are easier than others, so to speak. You clearly started facing some adversity early in your young career of wanting to do this. And that adversity actually built tools inside of you of mental fortitude, physical fortitude, and that passion and desire to drive forward. And I think that you actually really started this conversation well whenever you talked about how at 5, without really any knowledge, that seed was planted and a passion started to develop. And then whenever you got your first taste of it, which was just a couple years later, you realized this was something that you really wanted to pursue. So, give me one other example, because one other thing I want to kind of know is, I know what you have to do in certain sports, baseball, football, to get better and better. What are some of the things you did or had to do to get better as a horse rider or a bull rider?
Well, one thing I had to do, I knew I had to change the way that I lived every day.
Okay.
Far as mentally, I had to stay strong in mind. Body, had to stay physically fit. My buddies were out running, playing, swimming, doing all these things during the summer, riding around, going to the lake. I was going to a rodeo or I was working to make money to go to the rodeo.
Oh, wow.
So I was always preparing. I missed out on so many things. I missed out on my senior prom to go to a rodeo because it was a very big rodeo and I needed those points to go towards the final. So, I made a lot of sacrifices at a young age and I just wanted to make sure that I put everything into my career, so if I ever had to look back, I couldn't say I wish I would have did this or I wish I'd have did that. Of course, I still got some wishes I would have did and didn't. We all probably did.
I think so. I think a lot of people will look back and think to themselves, did I empty the tank? Did I give it everything I had? Could I have done more?
That's right.
And it doesn't matter what that is. And now look, I'm living an example in front of you. Honestly, I don't regret a single thing that I've built to where I'm at today. From family to jobs, all of the above. Being a firefighter, paramedic was a dream come true in a lot of ways. But I will say this. I always felt like I could have been a Major League Baseball player. But I did not put in the sacrifice that you're talking about. I had a natural talent for it, and you tried to ride that wave of talent, but what you don't realize maybe when you're young. And if you don't have good mentors to
right.
push you, you don't see what's coming down the road and how much harder things get. And so for you, it sounds like you already had a lot of things instilled in you early about why you wanted to do it and how to drive, but you didn't have family members that had that in their arsenal to be able to give you the insight. So that really a lot of that personal drive came from in here. I say all those things, and I had no idea what really put you to where you were as far as being a championship horse rider, but I knew it had to be some stuff in there. Self-discipline, sacrifice, hard work, all of those are ingredients that I like to refer to as ingredients to be successful at anything.
Amen.
At anything. It doesn't matter what it is. You can have a passion and you can have a talent for something, but if you don't put the work in, you're not going to go to the next level.
I agree.
So at 13, you win your first world championship.
Yes, sir.
After that, and by the way, so I want to make sure that people understand what is like, you said points. So how long is a circuit or how long is a season or how's it said?
Well, the Little Britches deal is, matter of fact, like Ty Murray. I don't know if you've ever heard the name Ty Murray. He was all around like 19-time in a professional rodeo, but
wow. He
started out in Little Britches. So there's been some really, really big athletes names that have come through Little Britches, but every year we would have our finals there. You could win so many points, and then you would max out in points. But they had age group up to 18. Once you got past 13, you stepped up to a which they call a senior group. You get on full size grown bulls and the whole deal.
That was the next question coming up. So good, keep going. You're covering that one.
That was my next. So that was my last year. Okay. The only year I started riding bareback horses. I won the world title in the juniors. So the next year I moved up to the seniors. Mm-hmm. And I made the finals that year, but I didn't draw very good out there. Matter of fact, I had a really terrible finals and was kind of fighting my head. But I went back next year with red eyes. I was ready, and I wasn't going to hold nothing back. I kind of felt like I didn't put out quite as much as I should have the year before. I didn't ride as good as I felt like I could have out there, and it showed. So when I went back the next year in the seniors, I won the world that year. Again, that was my second world title. That was in 2000. And that was kind of a tough one. I was out there that year at the World Finals, and as soon as I received all my world champion rewards and stuff, I found out two of my best friends got killed in a car wreck. So
dang.
Never really got to enjoy that like I did the first one because all this happened. But, I look back, I'm grateful that all those things happened, not losing my friends, sure. But, the experiences I have, even though some bad things happened along the way, I was still blessed to be experienced a second world title at such a young age.
So what is that season? What's the length of a season?
It's a year.
It's a whole year.
It's a year.
Okay.
It goes. Rodeo really never stops.
Okay.
We'll be rodeoing into, like in the year 24, we'll be rodeoing in 23 in October. Already be points for 24.
Dang. Yeah, so this continues. So out of 52 weeks, how many weekends are you riding?
Man, if you want to, you can go to rodeo every weekend somewhere. I went to 9 rodeos in a week one time.
In a week?
In a week. When I was professionally rodeoing for a living, I'd done it for 18 years. And,
wow.
I've been to many as 9 in a week.
Dang.
And I've never drove so much in my life. It was me and 3 other guys.
So it was just all over the place.
All over.
It wasn't like in a single area.
Oh, no. We were driving so many hours, many miles
Holy moly. So do you have to get invited to these things?
Well, at some of these bigger rodeos, you have to stay in the top 50 to be guaranteed to get in. When we call to enter these deals, the top 50 is usually always guaranteed a spot. And some of these deals will be invitational, just depends on where you're at, what's going on. So
I'm going to step out of the realm of Davy for just a minute because I want to relate a story to you on this because it just kind of came to me. Just thinking about my first experience with rodeo was the bull rides up here in Memphis at FedEx Forum. We had a foreign exchange student in 2020 that come to stay with us. And I'd never been to a rodeo. I'd always said I would go, and I just never had done it. And in Brazil, as you probably know, a lot of Brazilian riders, a lot of pro Brazilian riders come over here to America. They're really good, especially at bull riding. I don't know about the other events, but bull riding especially. And so he's like, hey, look, we'll take Andressa. We'll go up there. Dude, for 8 seconds, I've never been on the edge of my seat more. The whole time I'm just like, I can't catch my breath. And you just see these guys flying in the air, and some of them will get hung, and then they're like getting drugged, and the guys on the horses are superheroes. They're just whipping in there and, wrangling the bull in all different directions and holding him still so they can get. I'm just like, dude, at this point, I had retired from the fire department. I thought I had felt adrenaline, and I probably had a few times fighting fire. But I'm like, there ain't no way on God's green earth I'm getting on a 2,000-pound bull. Those dudes, man, they were scary. And then so I was actually a little bit hooked, and we've been to several rodeos since then. And, of course, now we've been to the full rodeo where they have the whole thing with the barrel racing. They have the kids sometimes on the sheep.
Oh, yeah.
I believe they're on the sheep, yeah. And so, I've been to a bunch of those things. So I'm just saying, to a point, I get it. And now it also comes clear after hearing some of your story why country singers write songs about keeping your kids away from the rodeo.
Oh yeah, don't let them grow up to be cowboys, Mama.
I mean, there's a host of songs about stay away from a rodeo, right?
That's right.
All right, so here we are. We're getting close to the first break, and when we come back off of this break here, and it's only one break, so there's not like a second break, we're going to dive into some of the problems that come along with this. But at the age of 18, how many world championships had you won?
I had won 2.
Okay, and at 18, do you age out from that? And now you're in a different. I'm assuming out of senior, and now you're in a what? What is that called?
I went straight in a senior in high school. I was 18 years old when I went in my senior year. I went straight into pros right then. Yes, sir.
And so pro circuit is, again, it's all over the world, or all over America at least.
All
I know.
Over the world.
It's all over the world.
Canada. And,
okay, that's what I was thinking you'd say. Yeah, so all over the world, and you have to be in top 50, be guaranteed a spot. You can apply for as many of these as you want. You rode as many as 9
in a week.
9
rodeos in 1 week.
So up into 18, besides the arm flopping moment, what other injuries had you sustained up to 18?
Well, I had 3 surgeries on my riding hand, on my riding thumb. I had some screws put in that 3 different times. I had a reconstructive knee surgery. I'd broken, I don't even know how many times I broke my ribs. I have broke my ribs more than anything on this body of mine. But as far as that, just most time it was just mostly pulled muscles. I've tore my groin a couple of times. That was been a really tough one to get over through the years.
No shoulder issues?
And yes, I have actually, but it was probably when I was about 20 when I messed my shoulder up for the first time, and I got shoulder problems to this day.
Man, I feel you, brother. I've had 3 shoulder surgeries.
I need one.
Once you jack your shoulder up, it's like it can never get right again.
Never.
I mean, it's a long, arduous process. So some of that plays into where the story's going to go next. So you continue to have some injuries, which is expected in the rodeo, obviously.
That's right.
And you said you rode professionally for 18 years.
18 years.
And so you just turned 41. How old were you when you rode your last rodeo?
I was 36 years old.
36. So, wow. So, and all the way up to 36, I imagine there were quite a few more injuries. 16 more years after age 20.
Yes, man. I broke my back. I've had several really rough injuries since then. Later in my career, I broke my back. I was out a year, and I come back at 36. Had a really good year. Made the WCRA finals. Got out there at the $500,000 round, the semifinals. Had already had enough points to go on to the $1 million round, but it's mandatory to go to the semis. First round out there, a horse, as soon as I nodded my head, the horse flipped in a bucking chutes and pushed my rib cage up in my belly. So that was my career-ending injury right there.
That was the nail in the coffin, so to speak, as they say.
That was a nail in the coffin.
Jeez.
I was going to retire at 35, and I was still doing it at 36. I was being a little bit selfish, I guess. I loved it so much I didn't want to let it go.
I mean, look at Brett Favre, Michael Jordan. You name all the greats. They just kept going. They were like, well, I'm past my time, but I got to do one more year. I mean, Tom Brady. There's so many examples, right? So it makes sense. In fact, at the last rodeo I went to, there was a 41-year-old still bull riding.
Oh, wow.
Out of Brazil.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Grandpa was doing it. And he rode 8 seconds on the first round, and then he got bucked off the second round. So, anyways, it was very impressive. The whole place stood up whenever he got it, because it's like, old guy doing it, baby. We all feel you, baby. I mean, I get up, I go to the bathroom in the middle of the night at 50, almost 51. I'm walking back. I'm like, I don't know what I just pulled. Something is not right now. So I say all these things, and look, we could go on for a while about your professional bull riding and your horse riding and what all the things that you were able to accomplish as a professional. 18 years, obviously a very stellar career, probably longer than the average Joe, I would imagine. I mean, I can't imagine that 18 years and going past 30 is a lot of them out there. There's a handful, sure, but like we said, it's a short-lived career. It's so physical. Sure. And all of these injuries, they start to pile up on you. And at some point, and this is where we're going to go after we take our break, and the conversation is going to lead to this, which is something that, as you can see, we've already established Mr. Davy has great self-discipline. He had a great passion, worked hard for the craft that he loved so much. so much so that you had a hard time letting it go at the age of 36, something you loved, and it was your life. It was your world, right?
That's right.
And just like that, it's just as simple as something like that where your love and your passion can suddenly be strayed by just a few incidents that take place. And drug addiction is one of those things that there's no such thing as a certain demographic. It doesn't matter what race you are, what age you are, what your socioeconomic background is. You can be rich, you could be poor, does not matter. It can hit every single family. And unfortunately, that came your way. But that's not the whole story, because at the end of this, what everybody needs to hear is you get knocked down in life. You get knocked off in life, but you get back up.
That's right.
And what you do with it next is going to be so important. So I'm going to ask you guys, do not go anywhere. You do not want to miss the second half of this. We'll be right back.
A great opportunity awaits. The Motivate with Coach Camp podcast is now in its second season, and we are excited to say that we have listeners all over the United States and in 19 countries. If you have a company and you're interested in some very affordable advertising, while at the same time supporting a great cause, please go to motivatewithcoachcamp.com and fill out that sponsorship page, and we'll get right back to you. You can support the podcast through donations on Venmo at Motivate with Coach Camp. Thank you to all the listeners and guests who have blessed this podcast with their engagement and involvement.
Welcome back, everybody. So right before the break, we are here with my friend, Mr. Davy Ross. He was a professional bareback horse rider for many years, 18 years to be exact, after he had, 16 years after you turned 18. Let's see. Was it 18 years you said you were a professional? Okay, I want to make sure I got that right. Yeah. 18 years of a professional. We had kind of walked down how many championships he had won. He was also a bull rider. And then the long host of injuries that come with that type of obvious occupation, if you will. So recreational / become an occupation. And Mr. Ross, clearly you would expect to have injuries. When you have injuries, sometimes it requires casts, sometimes it requires surgery, pins. You've had it all.
That's right. I've had it all. I've had the surgeries, the screws, the pins, you name it.
Getting on an airplane's not easy.
It's not.
You're sitting off everything. MRI machines are out.
That's right.
It's like you're not getting in our machine, pal.
That's right.
Yeah, so ultimately, whenever you go down those roads of injury, obviously doctors want to dull the pain. That's just natural. I had to do it myself, right? So having shoulder surgeries, as I mentioned, clearly they put you on, whether it's lower tabs, Percocets, you name it, and you take them for a period of time. And right. It's to help mask the pain, because you are going to be in pain after those injuries.
That's right.
There's probably other types of options that are out there, but that's the go-to for a lot of folks. And the truth is, I don't know what the numbers are. I don't know what the numbers are of people that become addicted to that. I know on a personal note, so I can only speak from me. Taking them, I don't like being foggy-headed. I don't know if you could tell, Davey. I'm ramped up a little bit.
That's a good thing to have good energy.
I got a lot of that pent up, so constantly I'm on the go. And so taking any kind of sedative slowed that down and made me feel just not good. I was not me. I always told my wife, and I'm not making light of this, but I'm like, if I were on a drug, I would want something that ramped me up. I could not stand being pulled down. I just cannot, that draw, I didn't like it. But here's what I do know. We had a guest on, Casey Smith. Casey Smith was an athlete, played football, told his story about how he, for the first time, took Percocet. And it's not always that way. Some people don't have that reaction like I had, where I didn't like that drag. And it set off this euphoria inside of them where they felt like they were invincible. And that was how he described it. I didn't think that his explanation to it was foreign to most people. I think a lot of people probably have that. And he talked about how it was simple. It started small, and then he craved that feeling, and he wanted to go find it again, and then how he sought it out. And so a big part of the story of why you're here and the professional bull riding, how that led you to an innocent thing that took place against you. Talk a little bit about how that developed and when you saw some of those problems starting.
Well, I never really knew I had a problem with pain pills. I had been on them for so long, like we just said, surgery after surgery, injury after injury. So for a long period of time, I was taking them every day. And, you hear about addiction and stuff, and it kind of scares you, and it kind of scares me. But I never thought I would have to worry about addiction, because I never really, messed with nothing like that. But anyways, when I got to taking those deals for a long period of time, I just remember when my medicine ran out the first time, I just started feeling bad all over awful. Didn't have no energy. And but anyways, I'd reached
How old
out.
were you? Do you remember?
I was probably, I'm going to say, I was probably about 20 years old by this time. I was about my second year of my professional career. I'd ran out, so I called my doctor, and my doctor had called me some more medication in. And when that medication hit my system, I knew I was in trouble because all that mess I was feeling went away, and I felt good.
Oh, so that was like the first recognition of, oh, this is why I've been feeling the way I did. You really had no clue.
I had no clue why I was feeling so bad. It wasn't the pain. It was just all over, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyways, I realized right then I could take that, and I felt good. And then I wanted to go do stuff, and I could do stuff, and I could function. And just as time went on, I just kept taking them. And then when I wanted to stop, I realized then there's all these other problems come with stopping.
Yeah.
You know, withdrawal symptoms, you name it. It's just like,
how much do you think you were taking at a point?
At one time, I was taking about 8 pills a day. That's when I knew I had a problem. I had to have at least 8 a day to function, you know, to get through the day. And then that later progressed.
Yeah.
And then it was more along 20 or 30 a day. And I look back now and think, how can someone take that much medicine and still be here to tell about it? But my tolerance, I guess, had built up through the years, you know, just taking it.
And how old do you think you were when you were reaching that 20 mark?
Well,
So you started at 20.
About 20 years old, this kind of come in my life, and all through my 20s, it never really stopped.
So for a decade of this.
For a whole decade, I would do the surgery deal and come back and you know, do my rehabilitation, go back to rodeoing. And I remember when I'd be on the road, I never could get too far from home without worrying about running out of pain medication and being on the road and going through all these withdrawal symptoms out on the road. Trying to professional rodeo just wasn't going to be
not going to be something work out.
That's right. It wasn't going to work out.
So were you getting the pills strictly from doctors, or were you seeking it elsewhere? Okay.
I was getting it. By this time, I was getting, all my doctors would write me anywhere I could buy them, get them. I was getting them.
Yeah.
And just more. I just couldn't get enough of them.
Casey spoke about how, because that was one of the things I was curious of, because I know today they have like pain clinics. I don't know how prevalent they are. I've never been to one. I don't know those answers, but I know they exist.
That's right.
And so you can get certain prescriptions for periods of time. But I asked him about how did you acquire that? And he said that he was very creative, that it started out, he would look for people that had injuries. Or maybe they had a tooth surgery, or they had just recently been to the doctor because they broke a bone or something. And he would pay money to get their pills. And so he was acquiring it that way. And then that led to a point where that wasn't enough. And so then he had to find dealers. And so then he started finding dealers. And you should go back and hear his story. I don't want to even misquote him, but he was somewhere in the neighborhood of like 30 barbiturates a day. And I mean, it's like he doesn't understand how his body didn't give out.
That's right.
And so for you, talking about like you get up to 20 pills a day, and this is throughout your 20s, at some point, I can't remember how old he was, but he said he had that revelation, that moment. Oh, I know what it was. He had been arrested, and he had seen the video of himself whenever he had been, you know, I don't remember what he was on at that time. If it was, it may have been heroin at that time, but he said he saw himself for the first time. He saw himself, and he recognized, oh, he's got a problem. Because up to that point, he always, when he was taking the drugs, he felt normal. He felt like he was on top of things. He had complete control. And he said he didn't think of himself as, quote, a junkie, because a junkie is something different. It's somebody bad. Those are bad people. So he didn't associate with that. So throughout your 20s, clearly there has to be some recognition moments of that. You said, you know, obviously you felt better. You felt normal when you took them. Did you start to recognize at some point you had a problem other than just when you left home and you were like Jones, and I'm like, I got to get back home?
I did. I knew when I went through all my therapy with my knee, it was time to hit the road and be serious. And I couldn't get back out there because I was chasing my addiction every day, just trying to survive by day, you know. And by this time, I was in full active addiction. Mm-hmm. But I knew I had to do something. And I just remember that first time, you know, I remember calling and telling my mom, I was like, look, I was at no end, you know. I was
about to ask you who you went to. So your mom was the first one you let know.
She was the first person. I'd called her, and I just told her, I said, I'm having some trouble. And she said, I knew something was going on with you. I just didn't know what. And I said, well, I'm addicted to these opioids, and it's bad. Mm-hmm. I get sick. And I said, I didn't mean for this to happen, but I took them for so long. And when I realized I had a problem. It was a little too late.
What was her response?
Well, immediately she was concerned, worried. She didn't want nothing to happen to me. When you hear your child, even though your child's grown, has a addiction to medication, you automatically think, I could lose that person because it happens every day, right?
Sure it does, yeah.
So I'm sure it was a little scary for her, but she went to trying to get me in some places, and it took a couple weeks. But I remember through that time, I went on and started trying to do it myself. And I'd kind of went over the hump. I actually kind of had it in my mind that I was done. And then I had a conversation with her. She was like, oh, no, we're going on to a treatment. So then I was like, well, if I got to go anyways, I'm just going to kind of go wild again. So I kind of used that excuse to kind of run back out there. And but my mom, they sent me to a treatment center, and I didn't stay but a couple of days. I ran out there, and just that was a steady deal, in and out of rehab through my whole 20s, and later progressed on.
When you had considered yourself possibly having broke the cycle, how long of a period of time had went?
Just several days, just enough to get through that baddest part of it. The first 2 or 3 days are so bad,
So to that point, you'd never really tried to get away from it?
I never tried it. I never tried it. And but once I went down there and stuff, I stayed a couple of days, started getting really sick, and I ran out. Mm-hmm. Just kind of like I did.
Do you remember the place you went to?
I went to Fairland. Was the first place I ever went to treatment center.
Okay. Yeah, one of the things that and we just talked about Miss Betsy Bailey, which was also a previous guest of mine. That's the thing too. So it's no one single drug. Like hers was meth, and then I've had guests on here that was addicted to crack, and then I've had the starts out with barbiturates, and then maybe it goes to like hydrocodone, Percocets, and then eventually into heroin. So there's any of those things that grab a hold of you and control you can become an addiction. Alcohol, obviously, had several folks that had to battle that. And the one thing that every single person goes back to is what you just said. Whenever it feels like you're not the one in control making the decision to get better, it's not going to work.
That's right.
Every single one of them said that they left multiple times. They would go to a treatment center, they would leave. But it was because of the, I don't want to say force, but the direction of others, loved ones typically.
That's right. They want you to get better.
They want you to get better. Now, mention this because this is the part where it's somewhat unique but always similar in the same way, where a person that has been through that, they come out the other side, they can reflect back now. What was that desperation like for your parents? Because here's the reason I asked that, because I think about it too as a parent, and I know what it's like to want something for somebody, and you do everything you can, but you cannot seem to change it. They have to change it. At some point now that you're past those days, what was it like for your mom back then? Did she ever talk to you about that?
I know it was extremely hard on both my parents. I remember my grandmother, my dad's mother was still living at the time, and she and I has always been real close. And I remember her telling me, she said, your daddy is mourning. And I was like, what are you talking about, who died? She's like, because of you. Mm. And he has been for a long time, and your mama is too. But my mama mourned the hardest. It was like a death.
Sure it is.
It was like a death because every day for them was just like they never knew from one moment to the next if they'd get a call in the middle of the night or the next morning. I mean, I was living such a rough, hard life. The only good thing come out of the way I was living was it ran my mother in a church. And she started praying for me right then. And that's when God started working in my life. But, but before that point, we went down a really long, hard road. And painkillers I got on heroin later,
And what age was that?
I was probably in my late 20s, early 30s. I'm going to say my late 20s probably. It's hard to really remember and think back because so many years of addiction and what played in, but I dealt with the crystal meth addiction. I went through all of it. Once I crossed that bridge, it just was
you were looking for the thing that numbed the problem.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I done dug a hole so deep, I guess. And but when I got on heroin, it's because the pills were so hard to get and so expensive. An addiction friend.
That's all right.
An addiction friend was who introduced me to heroin. He was like, man, I got a drug. It's cheaper. It lasts longer. You can, pretty much control your addiction. And that's when I was introduced to heroin. I was already a full-fledged addict. And once I did that, I crossed a bridge that I had no clue where I was fixing to go down.
Yeah.
And, man, it got worse.
This was in your late 20s whenever that started happening?
My late 20s.
You know, the similarity here again with Casey is the fact that he said that was kind of the same thing. The pills had gotten so expensive. I can't remember what he called them, but it was like $80 a pill or something, and I can't remember the name of the pill he was getting. But he said the difference was a pill would last you 6 hours or something, maybe 4. But the heroin was an immediate euphoria, but the problem is it burned off quick.
That's right.
And so then you're turning around, you're looking for another one.
That's
so
right.
how were you using? Were you using needle, or was it?
It later became IV use.
Yeah.
You know, I never did start that way, and I always look back and I always think, how could you get there? And you know, I just never would have ever saw myself putting a needle in my arm. You know, But when you get to far enough down that road of addiction, I don't think nobody ever plans to put a needle in their arm.
Mm-mm.
But when you get so whipped down in addiction that you can't even make good decisions for yourself, you start doing things that you would never do. That's basically when the devil's got the wheel.
Yeah.
And
Did you find yourself like doing this? Because again, this is part of it for a lot, not necessarily you, but did you find yourself willing to steal, lie, cheat, do whatever it took to get that next fix?
You bet. I started stealing. First thing, before I ever started stealing, I started selling all my things. Before I started taking anything or doing any of those kind of things, I started selling all my things. And before I knew it, I done sold out of things. And man, I went to selling clothes. If I had nice polo shirts or whatever, I would sell anything I had. And the only thing I never sold was my rodeo gear bag or any of those world champion saddles. Those had so much meaning to me.
Yeah.
But I was about at a point to I would have done anything. But I was stealing from my parents. My poor parents, I have truly put them down through there. But anyways, I started getting in trouble, going to jail. Got in some serious trouble. Next thing I know, I was in and out of jail every time I turned around.
Drug possession?
Never had a drug charge in my life.
Really?
Never had a drug charge.
Isn't that interesting?
But now, doing the things to get the drugs.
Get the drugs, obviously. Yeah, that's what led you down the road.
I had some forgery charges and stuff. That's what got me. Best, dumbest decision I ever made. Didn't know it at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I started getting in trouble, and before I knew it, I had basically lost everything, and I wound up living on the streets of Memphis, right there by 201 Poplar. There's a shelter right there.
I'm very familiar.
I'd stay in it, you know, from time to time, and would go in and shower, but mostly I lived in those streets every day. And it's funny because, you know, I come up in a good, loving home, supportive parents. My dad owns a nice, successful business. Had all the best upbringing I could ever have. You know, as a 2-time world champion, rookie of the year in professional rodeo. Used to sign autographs at all these big rodeos. My parents used to watch me on TV every week. You know, they kept up with me on tour. Done all these accomplishments of life, and now here I am living on the streets of Memphis, Tennessee, on the worst part of Memphis you could possibly imagine. But I fit right in because I was just the problem that Memphis has. I was that problem.
Yeah. As a firefighter paramedic in Memphis, made the same people over and over all throughout my career. Same folks, until there were times that they killed themselves with the drugs.
That's right.
And then you make them one last time, or you hear about so-and-so made them and, you know, they didn't make it.
They didn't make
and that was a cycle. That's a normal cycle, even to this day, or worse, I would even say, worse to today than it was back whenever I was working there, which I retired in 2016. So it's not too many years ago, about 8 years now, but the problem is way worse now than it was back then. And so did you have friends? This was another question I was thinking is, did you have friends at the time that saw you going down that path and tried to pull you back?
Well, before that, yes, a lot of them that were my true friends. They tried, you know, in any kind of way to help me, but I had burnt every bridge. Even my friends that were still my friends loved me, and they wanted the best for me, but they couldn't help me anymore. They all knew this because there was just nothing else they could do.
Yeah.
Everybody had tried everything. I'd been to 15 different facilities, and now I'm living on the streets. And be honest with you, when I got up there, I was in my own addict mind. I had gotten comfortable because it was full access to drugs every day. You're right up in the mix of all the heroin I could possibly want. You know, I just had to struggle every day to financially how I'm going to get it, you know, and that's a hard life to live.
Sure.
And that ain't living to me. That's dying. That ain't living. That's dying. And I was dying. I just didn't know it at the time, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, I remember sitting up there on one of them rough streets up there, just looking around at all the badness going on around me, and just so tired and whooped. And you know, I remember just thinking to myself, it just hit me for the first time. I realized where I was at. I don't know how I could see it, and I ain't seen it before now, but I could finally see where I was at for the first time. It kind of hit me.
How old were you?
I was, let's see, I've been clean 11 years now, so this was in 2013.
So you may be 31?
Something like that, I guess, about 31. And but I remember sitting there, and it just kind of hit me, man. I just kind of weep, you know, like a baby.
Yeah.
And I just remember I prayed. I had a relationship with God. I'd been saved. I'd been baptized at a young age, but I done got so far away from God for so long. But I knew He was there, you know. But I prayed. I prayed right then. I said, God, this ain't living. This is dying.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to die this way.
Yeah.
I said, I don't have no fight.
Mm-mm.
I don't have hope. I'm homeless, helpless, hopeless, all these things. Can you do something for me, Father God, that I can't even do for myself? And immediately He went to working in my life. Someone come up there that I hadn't seen, that didn't have nothing to do with me for a long time, picked me up, carried me to a detox center in Tupelo, Mississippi. And I got in over there. Oh, man, I got so sick after like the 5th day over there. When I come to, I was in the ICU unit over there. That stuff like to kill me coming off of it. I couldn't walk. I was in a wheelchair. Them sweet little old poor nurses over there, they had to wheel me everywhere I went. You know, it's a sad situation when a grown man that was supposed to be in good as fit shape as I was had to have 2 ladies wheel him in there and give him a shower because I couldn't even stand up.
Yeah.
But that's where I had landed, you know, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. For about a year, I didn't have no energy. I was just tired. I just kept pushing forward every day. And through the things that I had done, I had caused enough trouble and been enough trouble, and it was all finna catch up with me now because I was finna start dealing with all the things and all the people I'd hurt and all the badness I'd done. Now it's time to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so as soon as I got out of there, I went to a treatment center in Oxford, and I stayed there for a couple of weeks, and then I had to go to jail and stay to jail for about 60 days waiting to go to court. And over some violation stuff that I never did show up for, prior charges from forgery from years ago. I didn't do the following requirements because I got on drugs and never did follow up. So now I'm dealing with all that. And they offered me drug court. And it was the best thing ever happened to me. I did it for 4 years and 7 months, and it such a strict program that
keeps you accountable.
It kept me accountable for long enough to where I could build a little bit of a foundation to finally have a little solid ground to stand on. And during that time and through that time, you know, I had been through so many bad choices of women. I couldn't take another bad seed of a woman in my life. And so I started praying. God put the right woman in my life. You know, I wanted a family, kids, business, all these things. I wanted to get back to professionally rodeoing again. And I was a lonely person for a long time. And finally, he put my wife in my life. And then later we got 3 healthy boys and all these things, you know. But what made it so interesting is we got to go in a church and at a little cowboy church by our house, just a little small church.
I'm familiar with it.
And
my daughter used to go there some.
And it just became home. And through going there and building my relationship back with God, I started serving there. And it was crazy how it happened because it was during a revival. I had never done anything. I sat at the very back, high and by. That's all I did. But I've been praying to God. Well, during that revival, a little man come down in revival, and he was a little bitty guy, and he talked loud, and I really didn't like him at first, to be honest with you. He's just stepping all on my toes. But he said something in that revival, and it changed my life forever. I just didn't know it yet. And he says, man, we all have a God-given purpose for being on this earth. And if you don't know what that purpose is, ask God.
Yeah.
He'll show you. I've done all these things. God had gave me a wife. By this time, I got a successful business. I'm even back professionally rodeoing, all these things, but something was missing. I just didn't know what. I could feel that emptiness.
Yeah.
And it was my service. I just didn't know it. And but when he said that day, if you want to know what your true God-given purpose for what God made you for and sent you to this earth for, ask God. He'll show you. So I just kept praying that prayer. And finally, I went on my porch one night, and I got direct with God. And I said, God, it ain't that I doubt you. It's that I doubt me. Whatever you want me to do in life, I owe you everything. I'm
fully surrendering.
Fully surrendered. If you'll show me what you want me to do, and you'll send it directly through this person, I'll know it come from you. I know it's real, and I'm all in. And I won't back down, whatever it is, God. Well, about 2 weeks later, I get choked up.
No, man, I'm feeling you.
But 2 weeks later, I was sitting on a Wednesday night service in our little church, and a preacher comes by, and he said, hey, can I talk to you for a second outside? I said, you bet, sure. And I don't know what he's about to ask me or say. He said, man, I know this is going to sound crazy, and I don't mean for it to sound crazy. He said, but I cannot get you out of my mind, my thoughts. I don't mean that to sound weird or anything like that. He said, but I can't stop thinking about you. He said, for the last 5 months, the elders and I have been praying in about bringing in lay pastors for the very first time. This was a new build church. We didn't even have lay pastors. We had elders, but never even set up a lay pastor yet. And for the last 5 months, they had been praying over these 5 or 6 guys. I was not on that list. They had not met and discussed me. All I did was say a prayer to a God that's the Most High, the King of all kings, and he was listening. And he said when they met that night, they all come with my name. How is that possible? That's God. So when he's telling me that, I knew what he was going to say for it ever come out of his mouth.
Wow.
I could feel it in my heart, man. I had tears coming out of my face. When I told him, he had tears coming out of his face. But anytime we ask somebody on at that church, it's always an elder that does it. It wasn't. This time I prayed directly to be the pastor because I knew if he come, it was all just like I prayed it. And it was just like any of those elders could have come and delivered that message.
So that's what you asked for?
Just like I prayed for it.
Wow.
And then I come on as a lay pastor, and then years later now I'm an elder at the same church, which we've done a re-church plant, much bigger church now. But it's all God, man. It ain't nothing I've ever done. And what I love the most about it is because God knows our heart. And I didn't want my professional rodeo career to had ended like it did because of addiction. You know, and he allowed me to go back to the very top, the very top level of professional rodeo and be a competitor. And, you know, I got hurt out there, but it was God's plan, you know.
Yeah. So you made it back to rodeoing for another 4 or 5 years?
I did. I got to rodeo for about another 4 or 5 years of my professional career.
Yep. And so you've said so many things here that I want to go back. I don't want to step past it, and I want to highlight a couple of things that you mentioned in this. One, you talk about how you gave up everything for one thing, which is what exactly addiction is. Where what happens is if you give up the one thing, God can give you everything.
Amen.
And that's what happened.
Amen.
There's another part of this story that resonates with so many of my previous guests that have been down these difficult roads. And they talk about the gift of rock bottom, that so many people would never ask to be at that point in their life. They don't want to go to the bottom where they can't see anything that's going to be possible moving forward. But that's what they needed because their purpose served such a higher level, and that being now your testimony about how low you got from how high you were, and the fact that you were able to get through that for one reason, because you surrendered yourself.
Amen.
God saw the person, the disciple that you could become, but he knew that you had to go through some stuff. And the one thing about that is, and you said you were saved before you got into all this, and here's the part that I think is relevant, because if you look through the Bible, there's plenty of folks that follow God, that follow Jesus, and they went down some really bad roads.
That's right.
But what happens with that is God never said that your life would be easy. He didn't say that you would have everything perfect if you believed in him. But what he did say was when you turned to him, he would give you strength.
Amen.
And that's the strength he gave you, sir. And whenever you gave all of that addiction up in that one moment where you're sitting out there in the streets and you're looking around and you see the depravity everywhere and you realize this is not the life for me, this is not what I'm meant to do, you wanted to take action. That goes back to the story that I mentioned earlier, where every single individual that's come on here and spoke to their testimony, they could not be forced into that place. It had to come from a part of their heart and soul. They had to make that decision themselves. And that's the only way you're going to be successful. Mm-hmm. And so for those people out there that are watching this right now, all over the world, that are finding themselves addicted, or maybe And this is the bigger part. They don't see themselves as being addicted. They're in that process of going through the motions where they're making it day to day. They're surviving day to day. Maybe one of the other things that was said to me before by another guest was, I kept doing my daily responsibilities. I was going to job. I had my job. I was doing the things I was supposed to do. So in their mind, they didn't see themselves as having an addiction because they were managing the other aspects of their life. And they never realized how much that was creeping up on them. So right now, sir, here's what I want people to hear from you. In that moment of desperation, what would you say to somebody that feels like there's no hope or they don't see themselves as having that problem? What's the first piece of advice you would give them?
The first piece of advice I would always give a person, be honest with yourself. The biggest thing that we do as people is we lie to ourselves. We tell ourselves this lie just to keep doing these things we do. But don't put it off, man. Don't wait till you hit that pit like I did, because let me tell you something, sometimes God will place a pit in your life, and mine was the streets of Memphis. But there is a way. There's so many things and set up in place for people that's dealing with addiction, whether it's AA meetings, alcohol meetings. There's all these different kind of things, but my biggest thing, and I tell everybody this, and I will never not tell this, Jesus Christ is the reason I'm sitting where I'm at today. It's because I have a God. We all have a God. We have a Creator that has a power and authority over all things, to do all things. He spoke this world to his existence. He is the beginning and the end. He is the Alpha, the Omega. He is the I am and the I am. He can do all things. So if God can take clay, and I say this all the time in Scripture, in Isaiah 64:8, it says, "But now, O Lord, you are the Father. We are the clay. You are the potter, and we are the works of your hands." If God can take clay and make man, surely he can take a drug addict and wash you clean.
Sir, I think you're living proof of that.
Amen.
And that's the thing. There is hope. And whenever you feel like there is nowhere to turn, there is somewhere to turn.
That's right.
You just explained that, and I couldn't say it better. Even though I'm a professional talker, so to speak, I could not have said that better. And sir, I think that that's the part of the testimony that people need to understand, is that it doesn't matter how low that you feel like you've gotten and how much you've done wrong and how many people you've done wrong and how many people you've hurt. There's a path back. There's a better tomorrow. It just takes that one step in the right direction, and then have the faith. Keep working. Don't think it's going to happen overnight. Don't think that this is a quick fix. You didn't get to where you were quickly.
That's right.
That took time.
That's right.
Well, why would you expect it's not going to take time to get out of that spot? It's going to take time. Be patient. Trust. Have people in your corner. That's important. You talked about your parents that didn't give up on you.
That's right.
They were frustrated, but they didn't give up on you.
That's right.
You need people in your corner. And then in the end, that strong faith and that connection, at that point in time, you're no longer going to be alone in your life. And you found your purpose. And through your prayer, sir, I got to say this. I have been privy to so many miracles since I have been sitting at this desk talking to guests, that anybody that questions if miracles still happen, they just need to tune in, because plenty of people have shared the moments that is an impossible moment. You hear what I'm saying? It's an impossible moment without divine intervention.
Amen.
So, sir, the last piece of the story before we wrap up. Now, you have been down this long road. You have found your way back. This is the last piece of this that has really tugged at my heartstrings. The rest of your story does too, but this part here, when I heard this, I'm like, I don't know. Maybe we're related. I don't know, because I have a strong passion and desire to help kids. I want to see kids be mentored, be given great influences so they can grow up and become great individuals. I don't think everybody has to go down the same tough path. The idea is to try to use your moments to help others stay away from that. And sometimes it takes a really tough story like yours to resonate with somebody. So talk about the outreach that you do now with children and how you've tied this back into rodeo.
Yeah, well, now I have been blessed, through building my relationship with the Lord. He's opened up so many doors and opportunities to share with kids, and I have been able to go to some of these schools around here. A lot of them are private schools. Unfortunately, a lot of the public school systems haven't got on board with any kind of Christian anything really, but Independence high school. It's the only public school I've ever actually got to go to, but I've been to mostly all these others like Holly Springs. I've been to TIL twice. I've been to Magnolia Heights. But I go to these schools and I talk to these younger bunch, and, you know, I just see myself sitting there sometimes, you know, and I try to share my story with them, because the thing about it is the devil don't care who you come from, what you got, who your family is, how much they love you, and he's got a plan to destroy everything good about you. And whether we realize that the devil has a plan for us or not, he does. You know, God has a plan for us, and it's a good plan, but the devil has a bad plan. But you're going to be a part of one of them other plans, but you have a choice of which one that is. And if you're not real careful in life, things can happen that you never would have expected to happen. I never would have thought in a million years I would have been a drug addict.
Yeah.
But I made some bad decisions and along the way, and didn't stay focused and keep my eyes on God like I should have.
And now you get to share that story, that testimony with kids.
That's right.
And, you know, show them that there's a better way, and hopefully change some lives. Keep them from that moment. Like you talked about that preacher, that little preacher that came in, and just that one phrase, that one comment, that one moment got your mind thinking differently. I got news for you. That's the one thing about this podcast that I have come to realize. I never know what guest is going to come on here, and that one thing they're going to say that's going to hit somebody out there that's watching this. And that one moment changes everything about their life. And that's why I know this is important, sir. And so I do feel like this is my calling, and you are living out now your calling. And the one thing that I want my viewers to know is that you too have a calling. You have a calling. And if you don't know what it is, maybe you should ask God.
Amen.
Because guess what he does? He'll show it to you.
He'll show you.
So, Davy, I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming in. It's not easy to share vulnerable stories. I mean, anybody that has been down a road that they would not be proud of, so to speak, it's tough to share that openly. And then to be able to do that behind a microphone in front of folks, I get it. That's like a stage you didn't want to be on, where you want to be on the stage where you're riding the horse. You don't want to be on this stage, but understanding this stage is the one that you're going to impact lives with. And so as we wrap up here, I would like to know, what would you leave my listeners with? What is the last comment you would have for them, and what would you like to say to them?
I'd like to say, you know, that you do have a God-given purpose. We all have a God calling. Whatever you may be going through or facing in life, don't give up. Don't give in. God is so powerful. All we got to do is just be willing to give it all to him. And I promise you, no matter what you're facing, there ain't nothing he can't bring you through. He's just so powerful, and he's full of so much love and grace and mercy. And even when we can't forgive ourselves, God can heal those things in our heart.
Davey, I think it's wonderful, man. It's beautifully said. You have 3 kids now. You're a great testament to what is possible out there. Thank you for everything you do. Please continue, man. Keep fighting. Keep in touch with me, man.
Shoot you.
I'd love to hear, the next phases, the next chapters that you're going to write. You're a young guy, 41. Wait till you're 51. No, I'm just kidding. He's been through way more than I have. So thanks again for coming down, your time. And look, man, you're a blessing, brother.
Thank you, brother.
Yes,
you
sir.
Are too.
To my listeners and viewers, thank you so much for tuning in every week. Look, this whole platform matters because of you, and I know that you guys out there get a lot from my guests. You tune in every week. You send me the comments. I appreciate that personally. I know that we're touching lives and we're making a difference. Be a part of Team Coach Camp. Go to my website, motivatewithcoachcamp.com. Subscribe to my YouTube. And until next time, Coach Camp out.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want, and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no, I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up, it's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out, maybe it's the chemistry. It's time to break up so I can make a better me. Better believe in your mind, cause it's everything. You can mold, shape, find almost anything. All it takes is some time.